So this we have here is a 2008 Cadillac Sts, and the timing is off. So I didn't. It's kind of sacrilege, but I only had my only scope I have that does more than 4 channels is my hantek, and the only app that'll record more than 4 channels is the hantek software. So I'm gonna kind of have to do this part shady because I can't screen record on my little tablets in there. So we're gonna move you guys in here a little more and see if I can't get it to aim down some, just like that. So I acquired this signal. I went into the cam sensors on there, exhaust bank 1, intake bank 1, and then on this side over here we went intake bank 2, exhaust bank 2. And then since I didn't want to dig for the crank sensor down yonder, I just went into the ECM connector there and got all my grounds piggyback there to the battery, because we all know battery is the only correct place to go to for ground. So and then we all went into the hantek there. We got the scope here running live. So these are my cam sensors, my cam signals. I got 1, 2, 3, 4, and I got my crank sensor down here, number 5. Now, after recording this said recording here, I went to Rotkee's website and looked on there, and I found 3 or 4 different recordings of known good cam and crank signals. So after doing that, I then compared them to my recordings I got here, and we will get more into that at the end of this video when I go home and go to the go on my screen at home, and we'll do some more diaspars. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go to hscope with the on-screen recording, and we're going to do some in-cylinder pressure waveforms to dissect whether it's actually out of time or we have a phaser issue. So let me get that set up. I'll show you guys that setup, and then we will go to the on-screen recording. Alright, we're back, guys. So I want to show you the setup here real quick. I just left the other scope hooked up. So I got 2 leads running from the 512 Max. I got 1 running to my pressure transducer, which I then installed in the cylinder 1. And I have my sync wire here hooked to the coil pack plug. So I'm going to go back down. Now remember, I have a 5-volt feed going into my pressure transducer from it's actually from a jump pack down here. Runs into my pressure transducer that I have homemade from a compression gauge from AutoZone, and a back pressure sensor. So now we got that in the cylinder 1. We got the sync wire hooked up. Now we're going to go start the car, and then we're going to jump onto an on-screen. So I'll be right back. Alright, now we're back to the on-screen, guys. So here's a little tidbit for you guys. If you go to the automotive module and you click record, these bouncy channel signals over here, if you actually click them, it actually zeroes the channel. So you can actually zero your channel down before you start recording. So we'll zero both of them. We're going to click start, and we're going to start the car. I'm going to do a transient waveform separate because we need to do it. Now, so now we got the recording here. As you can see, we got a recording. It's still going to continue to record. So we're going to do it. And we will stop our recording. Now, my recommendation is, as soon as you're done recording, always save your recordings first thing ever. We're just going to put Cadillac in here. Maybe we can't spell. Nope, still won't spell. Oh, there it goes. Cadillac Sts bank. Cadillac Sts. We're going to put bank. 1. Okay, maybe it's just going to change it on me. One more time, guys. I'm sorry. Getting a little ahead of myself here. Bank 1. Okay, done. Save. Alright, guys, so now we're back. So now we did our idling, our snap and decel. Now we want to do a cranking waveform. And we want this cranking waveform to be with the throttle plate shut. So we have to disable the ignition and fuel, one way or the other. I recommend disabling ignition. That way you still have your fuel in the cylinders. Obviously we don't crank this forever, but then you can see all I did was unplug all my coil packs. I just unplugged every one of the coil packs. That way it disables the ignition, car won't start. Now we're going to go back to hscope and get our cranking waveform. Leave the same setup we had before, 150 milliseconds per division, or 150 samples. We're going to hit start, we're going to zero all these, 0, 0, start. I'm going to crank the car. Stop on that recording. Verify our recording. That looks good. Now we're going to go ahead and save our data. Always, always, always save the data. Cannot stress that enough. CAD. Well, I don't know what I'm typing there. CADI. Cadillac STS. Bank 1. Crank. Okay, save the data. Save the data. Alright, now we're going to go ahead and clear our data. Alright, now we're on the other side. I just hooked it the same way up. I got my pressure transducer in the front cylinder on the driver's side. I got my signal wire in the coil pack on the same, or signal wire in the plug from the same cylinder. Now we're going to go ahead and hit record on this, and we're going to get our cranking waveform, zero both channels, start. Cranking waveform. Now we're going to stop that. Go crank. Go. Cadillac STS bank 2 crank. Done. Save. Now I like to just get all these before I even go into the whole like diagnosing or researching the data here. So I like to just be able to record them all first. So let me just plug in the coil packs, and we're just going to go ahead and grab our next waveform here, running waveform. So we're going to go ahead and record again. I'm going to go ahead and start. Fire it up. So we'll go ahead and stop one more time. I'm going to save the data because that's what we always like to do. Cadillac bank 2 idle snap. And once again, all these waveforms will be uploaded to the cloud and linked to my YouTube account so you guys can find these waveforms. Okay, so that's the end of that one. So now we got that all recorded, so now we'll go through and dissect all these. Hey everyone, how's it going? So I have recorded this part of the actual on-screen analysis like 3 times because I wanted to make sure the information I give you guys is correct, and I would go back and like review my notes and review what I said and realize that what I said wasn't quite right. So if I rush through this a little bit, honestly I apologize, because I've done it like so many times like I might start like running myself over, so I do apologize. So like I always say, if there's any question you want to ask individually, you can find me on the Telegram, you can comment on here, I'm going to gladly answer it. If you have any pointers to me, by all means please tell me, because I don't much get into the in-cylinder pressure waveforms. I mean, I know enough about it to be able to tell you whether something's wrong or not, but like the secondary ignition, I use that almost daily. So like I can look at that and tell you got a problem inside the cylinder, outside the cylinder, lean, you got leaking intake. Like I can tell all kinds of stuff from the secondary waveform. This car right here, however, the ignition was off, or the timing was off, and they had me come verify it quickly by checking the crank sensors and cam sensors, and it was off. And you could tell when it started. It had like that tight spot, and then a real loose spot and tight, like the timing was off. So they redid the timing. It runs better, but it still wasn't running right, so they had called me back to look at it again, which you guys will see. I put the hantek on it, and I got the cam and crank sensors, and I verified it to a couple known good ones on the Rotkee library website, and it was off. So in order to make myself feel more comfortable and to reassure them that I wasn't just winging this and it was actually physically off, not a sensor issue, I did in-cylinder waveforms. So I'm going to go over this one more time with you guys. Well, first time with you guys, but like the third time for myself. But it helps me remember what I'm trying to learn, and it makes sure I give you guys the right information. So let me start this over here again for you guys and make sure I do it right. So this is going to be our bank 1 idling, and down here at the right of the waveform down here you can see we got a couple snaps down here. So we're going to start with our idling. I'm going to put our 720 degree markers center of the tower. Don't mind my pressure sensor being squared off at the top or squared off at the bottom. I forgot my good pressure sensor, and this is one I had made with a back pressure sensor out of a 6.0 power stroke back pressure sensor, exhaust back pressure sensor. So it works. It's not ideal, but it works for what I needed it to, so please bear with me. I do apologize. But so our towers here, what we want to do is, if you had like the actual full tower, you would want to come down halfway with your ruler, like down halfway of your towers, right? And what you will want to do is you would want to measure the distance between where this ruler intersects here and the top dead center mark, and where the ruler intersects here and the top dead center mark, and measure them and make sure they're darn close, because you don't want the towers to lean. Leaning towers during cranking or idle means a sign of a mechanical error. They can lean during a snap and a decel, but they cannot lean during cranking or idling. So that's how we do that. Now, down here at the bottom, our exhaust pocket right here, we want to see a point of definition. Now, like I said, it is hard to see because of my pressure transducer, so once again I do apologize. But this, you will see this pocket right here, it kind of not really comes to a point, but it comes to a point where you'll see like it's a definite change. It starts to rise again. So that point right there, we want to be somewhere between usually 30 to 60 degrees, usually somewhere in there. Now, as we can see here, this is going to be probably somewhere right around pushing that 60 degree mark. So this is pretty close to that mark. Now, what also further confirms this is this bottom dead center line right here. You want it to be like right at the top corner of this rising line here, or like a little bit over halfway. So like anywhere from in this area to this area is where you want that bottom dead center mark. So this is a little bit advanced. I would say maybe 5-6 degrees. So that's my feeling and opinion on that. Now, if you come over here to this top dead center line right here, you actually want this top dead center line to be pretty close to the point where this intake valve starts to open, because this downward strike right here is when your intake valve starts to open. Now you want this top dead center line to be pretty close to that. So in all honesty, if you ask me, this is a little out of time too, because you want it somewhere into here. So I'm gonna have to say that's probably a good 5 or 6 degrees off also. And that is further confirmed by the fact that you want this waveform right here, this downward strike right here, you want this to be closed by between like 45, 30 to, yeah, you want this to be closed from like 45 to 60 degrees max, this slant right here. Now you can see that it is closed by 60 degrees. However, you want the 20 to 30 degree mark, which this is 30, so you want it back here to here somewhere to be in the center of this rising tower right here, or this falling slant right here, slope. So as you can see, we are definitely advanced on that, because what we got here, we got 300, and we're going to say 397 degrees to about the center. Well, we'll give it a little bit better. Do like 395 degrees to the center, and it should be over in this area somewhere. So we're 380, so we're about 15 degrees. We're gonna say that's actually retarded, because that's actually moving too far to the right. Anything to the right of the screen is retarded. Anything that moves left on the scope screen is advanced, and that's with any waveform. So this intake valve is actually retarded. Now we want this to be 30 to 60 degrees after this bottom dead center line right here is where we want to see this intake valve close and start to rise. Now you can see that we're just past the 60 degree line is when our valve is shutting and starting to rise for our compression here for our next fire stroke. So we're definitely advanced on that also, or retarded on that also. So we're not much, but we're probably, I'm gonna say probably another 15 degrees or so off on that line there also. So this whole entire intake cam right here is actually retarded probably 10 to 15 degrees. And then this exhaust cam right here is actually, let me see, so if that's there, we're going that way, so that's going to actually, let's actually move to the right, so that's actually going to be retarded also. So we could actually say that exhaust cam right there is retarded too, probably 4 degrees or so. However, yes, because yeah, so that would be retarded on the exhaust cam also, and that being our ignition, or our intake cam is retarded also, is what is making this top dead center line right here is moving it this way to the left, because our intake cam is actually spun to the right, which is retarded, because if it opened sooner it would move this over here, and it would also move our rise of the intake valve shutting more towards the bottom dead center line over here, which is in turn going to make this whole entire valley is going to shift to the left, which will advance it, because right now it is retarded. So that's a sign on there. Now, like I said, you always want to check this couple places, you know, good 2 places, 3 places, or even check it before and after your snaps. So we'll go down here after our snaps to where it returns back to idle again, and you know, we'll check it again just because we like to make sure we do our job correctly. We don't want to give anybody bad information. So we'll bring up our measuring things here again. We'll go to the middle of that one, go to the middle of this one. So here we are again. So we are, see this one right here is actually still retarded, because this should be over here somewhere. So we'll move to the right on this, probably, like I said, maybe only 4 or 5 degrees on the exhaust valve here. This intake valve is the same situation down here too. It's retarded probably 10, 15 degrees, 10 degrees maybe. Same thing over here, because we got, here's bottom dead center, 30, 60 degrees, and then our valve is closing right at the maximum point, but it should be back in here somewhere like this. So we're probably, like I said, 10, 15 degrees retarded on there. So this entire bank is retarded if you ask me. And actually the intake valve is retarded more than the exhaust valve is. Now we'll go back here to our snaps. So our snap throttle here, so you can see our regular idling waveform, and then we start to get thicker and our pressure starts to rise up to atmospheric pressure down here. Now if you have, I wish I had my right pressure gauge pressure transducer, and I do apologize, but I have these waveforms and I don't have the opportunity to take them again because the car is being taken apart. So you want these compression towers here to be these towers here to be 3 times taller than your idling towers. At minimum 3 times. They should be greater than 3 times, but at minimum 3 times taller than your idling towers. Now you also want to see these down here in the valleys in here. You want this to be like a nice flat line. And because of this turbulence I have going on here, that tells me that these valves are not opening at the right times as we're creating turbulence. So that tells me we're a little bit off time. But however, do not use your snap or your decels for timing alone. You shouldn't even use them for timing at all. I'm just saying, by the way that turbulence is right there, I'm just saying that's probably a timing issue because of the way the air is flowing in and the valves opening as opposed to where piston timing is. Like I said, they should be like a nice flat. They should actually come down, and I mean they'll have some waves to them, but they should just ride right along here. If you see this exhaust pressure raising up 20-25 psi or so, or even 12 or something like that, that's probably a sign of a restricted exhaust, whether that be a cat or something of that nature. Now in your decels here, in your decel towers down here, whether they're really short, you never ever want to see your exhaust tower higher than your compression tower, because that is a clear sign of clogged exhaust. Like I said, that's a clear, definite clear sign of clogged exhaust. Now if we go back down here to where we were, down here quickly, down here. Also, you never ever want to see this exhaust pocket right here should never ever be lower than your intake valve plateau right here. If this is higher than your intake plateau within like 2 psi, you're still okay. Any greater than that is mechanical issue, a sealing issue, valve leakage issue, something of that nature. But this one is actually lower than this intake valve here, so that means our timing and we having leaking issues. Now whether that's because this valve is opening too late, or shutting too early, or shutting too late, or whatever situation may be, we definitely have some leaking going on here, because what I'm guessing is the overlap time between the exhaust shutting and the intake opening is too far, so we're actually not getting as much vacuum as we should on the downstroke here in order to build compression again. So before we hit this bottom dead center, between this top dead center and this bottom dead center, we're not getting enough time in there, because obviously this should be shutting. This valve should be shutting way back. That should be shutting there, or opening there, instead of. I'm sorry, I apologize. This line should be back here. So this should actually be shortened up, and that should be opening there, which is going to give us more time to create that vacuum. Which is why I'm assuming that this line would not match the bottom of this exhaust vacuum. Okay, so that's pretty much it for our. This is for our idling and snap and decel waveform. Now we're going to go to the crank one, STS crank. Over here, this. I'm gonna blow this up here. Let's get this zoomed in here. Okay. I'm gonna turn off our ignition. Okay, so now with that being said, so yet again on our cranking, we want to see at minimum 100 psi. It takes 100 psi of compression in order for fuel to vaporize properly, in order for the ignition cycle to happen properly. I'm not saying at 97 psi the vehicle isn't going to start, but in order for it to be proper, it needs to be as close to 100 as possible. Obviously it should be over 100. Now our exhaust pockets here are actually looking semi kind of decent in this, but yet again, see, our exhaust pocket is lower than our intake, and that should not happen. So we definitely have an issue here with the intake valve opening too late, which is causing us not to get enough vacuum. And you see how we got this? You see how this vacuum, this line comes down, and we see that hook in it before it comes back up. That sudden change. So that shape is actually off, which is also indicative of an issue. But that point of change there, you can see, is kind of the point I was talking about in the idling waveform, as to where you want that timing to be somewhere between like 30-40 degrees ish or so before that bottom dead center line there. So that's kind of what you'll see. Obviously this should be like, it should kind of match, like you should have that little point at the bottom, but the one shouldn't come down sweeping and then one rise straight up again. They should kind of be somewhat sort of similar, the same shape. So so there's definitely some issues in timing on this engine. Now we're going to go back to, we're going to skip the cranking on bank 2, just because this video has gone longer than I thought it would, and the bank 2 cranking is the exact same as bank 1. This car actually has an issue on both banks, so we'll kind of get the same information on both sides. But yet again, on this car you have to do both banks anyway, so being the fact he has to take it apart has to come apart anyway. So let me turn this off here. This off. Put this on here, put that on there. Okay, so now we can see on this one that our exhaust kit timing is actually advanced on this side, and you can see that we're not getting the same height and rise out of this, because this should not, we should not have this slow rise right here. This should come up and flat like the other bank was. So this side actually has an issue with the exhaust cam. So as you can see, this line right here, our pink line there, it should actually be over in here to down here somewhere. So we're probably 180 to 155. So I'm gonna say we're good 20 to 25 degrees off on that, maybe somewhere in there, something. Yeah, maybe somewhere 20-25 degrees off in there. As you can see, our opening time here is really pushing the envelope. I mean, that's pretty far before top dead center that's opening. So we definitely have an issue going on here somewhere about this cam right here is actually very advanced, by like 20-25 degrees. Now see this right here, this is what I was talking about earlier with our top dead center mark here. See how it's right here where this waveform starts to come crashing down? That's good. That's where we want that to be. And then we're somewhere between 20 degrees ish right here, because you want 30 degrees for a non-phased intake cam, 20 degrees for a phased intake cam. So we're about 20 degrees right there, is actually just about perfect, halfway up our slope right here. And we want this complete action to happen before 45 degrees, and we're right at that mark, so we're looking good there. So then we come over, we got 30, 60. Now see, we're starting to rise a little closer on time. See, we're already rising before we get to the 60 degree mark on this one. So this intake cam is darn close. I mean, that intake cam on this bank is probably in time, but this exhaust cam is definitely out of time. And according to the signals I was getting from the hantek on the sensors in the vehicle, and when I was matching it to the rotkee diagram, or the rotkee's library waveform that I had gotten, I was like looking at the sensors, signals I was getting from the sensors, and then I was unplugging them. Like, I would see which one I thought was advanced, and I would unplug that from the car, and that was the same information I was getting on these scope waveforms. So I wish I would have recorded that, but the gentleman was trying to get out of the shop. It was closing time before the day before Thanksgiving, so he was trying to leave. So I just did it real quick as I was packing up the tools. So I do apologize for that. So like I said, then yeah, this bank right here is definitely out of time also, which is really sucks, because this gentleman had already done this car twice. Or no, this will be the second time when he takes it apart. So he's supposed to be taking it apart, and I had actually talked to this gentleman about I wanted to be there after he takes it apart. One, I offered to help him put it back in time and put it back together correctly. And two, I wanted to be able to see physically, like, and bring you guys like a little update clip, part 2 clip of this engine actually apart, actually see how far off we are, like physically with the camera, see how far these cams are off versus the waveforms we got here. Just so, for both of us actually, because I've never actually been around to see one taken apart to see how far off it was compared to my waveforms. Obviously, when I said it was off time with the waveform, I must have been correct because nobody ever called and complained. But I've never got to see, like, if I said that right there was 20 degrees off, is it actually 20 degrees off, or is it 6, or is it, you know what I mean? So I thought that would be pretty cool for you guys to see and for me to see later down the road. However, I did want to show you guys one thing really quick, so let me get to that real quick just to get that done here. We're going to go ahead and hit the bank to crank here. So I want to show you guys the difference in this. This is actually the bank 2 cranking waveform, okay? Now, I'm going to do this. Let me turn this off. Now, can you guys see there's the exhaust push right there. And this is our intake vacuum, okay? Now, this is cranking. Now, I want to show you this. Down here to this one. Okay, now here's our cranking also on this one. Now, do you see how we can see the little bit of an exhaust push, but you see how we have no intake mark here? We see where it opened a little bit, but we have no actual intake mark there. You have actually no intake valley there. Now, the difference is, this is the same car. The difference is when you do a cranking in cylinder pressure waveform, you have to do it with the throttle plate shut. You cannot do it with a wide open or clear flood crank. You cannot do that. You have to disable ignition, which I recommend, and then crank the engine over that way. You cannot do a wide open or a clear flood crank where you hold the gas pedal down, because it actually deforms your waveform. Like, if you see that and don't know the difference, you're going to say, well, we have no intake valve, no intake right there. But like I said, you have to do that with the throttle plate shut. That way you actually create that vacuum, and you can actually see that creating vacuum against that throttle plate, because if it's open, there's no vacuum there, so you can't really tell what your exhaust valve is doing. So I thought that was pretty cool. And one more thing, I know it's going very long, but I want to show you guys this. I'm actually at my brother's house for Thanksgiving here, and he had an engine in here, sitting in here, and I said, I'm doing a video right now on YouTube for these guys. I said, and I think it would be really cool in order to be able to show them this engine, because it was sitting here, and he was like showing me how he could spin it over by hand. Now it's a 4-cylinder. You shouldn't be able to spin it over by hand. So we threw the scope in it, in cylinder pressure test. Now it was only cranking. I did make sure the throttle plate was shut. And this yellow line up here is actually my first look sensor on the intake. Throttle plate shut and everything. We cranked the engine over with the starter. Obviously, it isn't running. We cranked it over with the starter, and if you guys look, we have no intake pull. And in my pulse sensor right here, I have no noticeable pulls for this cylinder. Every time the cylinder comes around, I have no pulls. And my voltage here on my pressure transducer is only at like 2 volts. And you've seen the other car, the Cadillac, it actually maxed out my gauge and had the flat tops to it. So this thing has like no compression, it has no intake pulls, and you can see how far down my exhaust valley is going compared to my compression. So this engine has major problems, and we ended up tearing it apart, or ended up actually putting the manual gauge in it too, and this cylinder don't even move the compression gauge. So I thought that was cool to show you guys that I actually did this on an engine sitting on the floor. The starter actually bolted the engine, thankfully, on this one, and not the transmission, so he was able to do it on the floor. Just hook a battery to it, threw that in the cylinder, cranked it over, and then recorded this waveform. So I thought I would just share that with you guys. I thought that was pretty cool, because I should have an intake valley in here. Now, obviously, it's not going to be one like an idling or nothing like that, but this shows my compression is way low, and I have absolutely no intake pull right here. And as you can see, it's the same battery and starter that would have cranked over the car in the car. So I should definitely see have an intake pull right here, and I do not. So clear sign of the engine is junk, and further confirmed by the mechanical gauge. So I thought that was cool to share with you guys too. So I'm sorry I rushed through this. I'm sorry this video took so long for me to make, complete, post, analyze these waveforms and everything, but I wanted to make sure it was right. This is a very detailed, very mind, how do I say it? You really have to think. You really have to pay attention to what you're looking at. You have to check 2, 3, 4 places. You have to verify your measurements. Even check a couple different cylinders. Like I said, I did the front cylinder on both banks, and I did it twice. I did it running, I did it cold, you know what I'm saying? So like, I wanted to make sure all this information was right, because this is a big call. You go to a shop or go to someone's garage, or, I mean, obviously I do this for a living, so like, the stakes are a little bit higher. But even for the DIY guy, you don't want to tear apart that whole engine because you read this waveform wrong, or you didn't have your information right. So like I said, I watch Bernie Thompson's Pressure Is On video 5 or 6 times. I watched Jim Thornton. I mean, I watch a ton of these videos. That's what I do in my free time. Where everybody else is watching football and going out drinking, I'm at home learning how to do this better, more efficiently, learning what I'm talking about, learning how to use the tools I have to do more things. So like I said, before I felt comfortable making a call on an engine like this, I have spent countless hours learning and studying this stuff. So like I said, I just wanted to make sure that I get that out there and clarify that, like, this isn't something you just go out and do and then just tell somebody tear an engine apart. That's a lot of money and a big call to make. So please make sure you're comfortable with it before you start making that call. Go out and use your own engine in your own car and get a pressure waveform of a snap and idle and a decel, and use your scope and measure things out and see where things are. And, you know, you got to get a feel for it before you start making. If you don't feel comfortable, don't do it. Because you don't want to give yourself or the guys that are doing this diagnostics like this a bad name for making a bad call. So, like I said, just take that extra time and just take a step back. And I sometimes tell my customers, hey, I'm sorry, but I want to be able to go home, load these waveforms up on my big TV, and actually, like, be able to see them 2 or 3 foot high instead of on a tablet. And I actually go home and measure them, and I scroll through them, and I let them flick them on my screen, let them roll through my screen really slow, and I watch them. And so, like, I make sure that sometimes it's not a call that you want to snap judge on. So just tell your customers that, hey, I'm pretty sure that this is the issue we're going to have. I want to go home and actually sit down where I have more time and actually analyze these waveforms and make sure the information that I'm giving you is correct before I make a call on that engine. So most customers are going to be like, that's fine, give me a call later, talk to me tomorrow or something. Because if you're making a call like a timing chain set, they're gladly going to rather give you the evening to look at it than you make a snap judgment and they waste time on that. So just something to think about, guys. Like I said, please comment, like, share. Any questions or anything, please contact me. I'll more than gladly get back to you as soon as I can, either on Telegram or YouTube. Once again, congratulations to Blaine Automotive for the winning on the giveaway there I did for the 50 subscribers, which is awesome, guys, because we're up like 63 subscribers. I have like over 1,000 video views, so that's awesome, guys. I hope it keeps going.